Well, good morning and welcome to the 3-Minute Rise and Grind. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, a very restful weekend. And now we can go ahead and dive right in. This week's topic will be dissection of cost-based pricing. You see, last week we were able to delve into the equation for cost-based pricing and some of the itemization. But we see that we still weren't able to really capture a really good snapshot of all the costs that must be included in your price for your business to survive and thrive. All right. So we're going to jump right in. Let's see here. So we are going to immediately begin with the outline, and I give you one each week. It's very important. Organization, that is extremely important to the success and thrive of your business and your operations more specifically. So I believe you heard me kind of allude to, it was not so much as a fleeting thought, but I quickly referenced it, and then we didn't talk about it anymore. But it's very necessary that organization is a core stronghold for your business. Now, for my organizational purposes, I use binders. And I enumerate those binders, and then I have a master table of contents. So for instance, maybe binder, and we had a poor connection issue, so I wanted to stop. But what I was referring to is that binder 1 would be maybe for payroll. Binder 2 maybe for taxation, and it could be all inclusive, or you could separate and have binder 2 be for federal taxation and binder 3 for state taxation or North Carolina Department of Revenue. Binder 4 for North Carolina Secretary of State or your respective state's Secretary of State, and all the documentation that would go into that. It's very important. I know that some individuals will suggest that you maintain records for maybe only 3 years. Some recommend 7. I recommend 10. I would keep both physical copies and electronic copies. There's also beautiful ways now that we can store in the cloud. Both the Apple iOS and Windows operating systems allow for that type of storage. I know for one, you have Microsoft, that suite, and you have the OneDrive, you have Google Drive, and then with Apple, you have the files that are directly available, and they're directly available with Windows as well, and you can separate those in folders and basically have your entire desktop integrated with your phone access. All right, so we are now about 4 minutes in, and we've got to rush through this. So let's go ahead and begin with dissection of cost-based pricing. You see the itemization of all costs. We'll go over rent, electricity, water, renter's insurance, business liability insurance, of course, if that applies, business vehicle. For your business vehicle, you have insurance, and your business insurance for your vehicle is different from your vehicle insurance for personal use. Let me say that one more time. Your personal use based insurance for your vehicle will be different and is different than that for business use. Your car note, which is not something that I recommend, and I'll explain why. Tags and property taxes on an annual basis. Gas. That applies directly to your fuel tax credit options. Maintenance, advertising, the wrapping of the truck, or maybe the wrapping of your vehicle, or maybe you have temporary advertising, like maybe a magnetic sign that you can take off. Then we go to signage, traditional advertising like radio, internet, the now traditional social media, TV, print media. Then you have your labor, of course, and I mentioned to you statutory employees and non-statutory employees, subcontractors and the like. Then third-party administrative services. Under that, you have payroll, accounting. Maybe you have a lawyer on retainer. Maybe a lawyer on retainer is necessary for the operation of your business. And a tax preparer. Sometimes the tax preparer, accountant, and payroll come from the same third-party service provider. And sometimes they don't, and you may want to keep them separate. There is a benefit to keeping them separate. I'll explain that as well. Then you have sales and use tax. Know exactly how much that is. We went over percentage just a little bit, but we're going to go into that more. Keep separate accounts for your sales and use tax. So that it's, especially if your primary line of business is retail, so that you can have that account set to the side, and then you can just forward those funds straight over electronically through an EFT, electronic funds transfer, by the online tax submission process with the North Carolina Department of Revenue. I've done that before. We'll discuss that very quickly as well. And of course, these things we'll be discussing this week, not all in one day, because we've got about 2 more minutes. Third-party retailer usually assumes the tax payment responsibility, but be sure. Third-party retailers may be something like Teespring, these awesome merchandise or maker accounts that they're providing now. They normally will handle the taxation and then just send you maybe a 1099 at the end of the year if you're a sole proprietor. And of course, if you're incorporated, then they don't send that. But normally they'll forward the sales and use taxes for respective for their state. But make sure that you have that handled properly with North Carolina. And of course, we're speaking of North Carolina as our base state because we're in North Carolina, but whichever state is applicable, you need to make sure through your Department of Revenue. All right. And then your 1099 form. All right. So let's go and let's see here. We're going to talk about rent. Okay. For the last minute, and this goes by so fast, and actually I think we've got maybe about 2 minutes. Rent. In rent, okay, you have not only, and you must make sure that you allocate for these things, otherwise you can find yourself in a really sour pickle, we'll call it, okay? You need to make sure that your rents, before you even apply for a space to lease, you must already have factored in the amount of rent you can pay and afford through your price of your merchandise, your price of your services. It is not a good idea to lease the space and then start setting price and hoping that everything works out. That is not a viable method. You want to determine your price for your goods and affordability. You'll be able to determine exactly how much you can afford. What is your maximum rent that you can afford? And if that number is $2,000 per month, you need to stay within $2,000 and understand that you can negotiate your lease. You can negotiate your monthly lease rate. Do not just necessarily accept that which is offered by the landlord. It is exactly that. It's an offer.